Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well, and thank you so much for joining us this morning to discuss global trade tensions that are implicating South African businesses. I'm just going to give everyone a moment to settle down, for more people also to be admitted into the meeting. And then I will introduce our speaker for this webinar. All right, while I'm still waiting for more people to be admitted, I just need to let everyone know that there are a couple of ways that you can interact with us during this webinar. We are going to share a couple of polls with you, so please give us your feedback with these polls. We also have the reaction buttons, so please feel free to do that. We also have the comment section. Our team will be in the comment section monitoring it very closely if you have questions, and then we will address them, of course. So please feel free to also raise your hand if you have a question to ask when we get to the Q&A section of the webinar. But those are a few ways you can interact with us. Please utilize them all. Thank you. All right, good morning again. I am Hazel. I am hosting this webinar for you today. And I'm just going to introduce our company and our speaker. We are Brynmore Chartered Accountants. We are based in Midrand. We have branches in Zimbabwe and the UK as well. And we have quite a number of services that we provide. These include our secretarial services, consulting, audit and audit readiness, internal audit as well, payroll services, human resources, tax services, and accounting services. Our speaker for today is Ms. Carol Rupia, and she's going to be talking us through what exactly small businesses need to be looking out for in terms of what is currently happening in our climate, our economic climate, with regards to the tensions that we have been seeing and reading about all this while. I'm just going to hand it over to her. Remember the ways that I said we can interact, your reactions, your comments in the chat. Please utilize them all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hazel. I take it I need to pick it up from here. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone to this webinar. And before I get into it, I just want to play a video that gives you a bit more details on some of our services, and then I'll introduce the topic and the objectives, and we get into the webinar for the day.
Are you looking for a trusted partner to enhance your organization's internal controls and ensure compliance? Welcome to Brandmore Advisory, where we specialize in internal audit, risk management, governance, and performance management services tailored to your unique business needs. Our team of experts is dedicated to providing comprehensive internal audits that identify inefficiencies and uncover opportunities for improvement. We help you navigate complex risk landscapes, ensuring your organization is prepared for any challenge. With our governance services, we strengthen your decision-making process, promoting transparency and accountability at every level. Our performance management solutions empower your organization to achieve its goals by aligning individual performance with strategic objectives. Join the many organizations that have benefited from our tailored solutions and expert insights. Choose Brandmore Advisory for a brighter, more secure future. Visit our website at www.brandmore.com or contact us at 011-0263-052 to learn more.
All right. Just to start off, I just want to welcome everyone, and I'm actually quite excited about this session because it hits home, it hits close to home, as they say it, for many of us. But the thing is, we never really pay attention. And today, as we talk about the global tensions, those big geopolitical shifts that we keep hearing about and how they affect us as small businesses, it feels somewhat distant, right? Almost like it's there. It's China. What does that got to do with me? You know, but when you look at it, it affects everyone, and it's got everything to do with everyone. And today there are four key objectives that we're going to cover in this webinar. The first one, we'll look at what's happening globally and why it matters. And then we'll go into high-level trade wars, political shifts, supply chain challenges, how that is impacting small businesses and growing businesses, as we like to refer them. And then why these growing companies in South Africa and elsewhere, for that matter, are being impacted. But overall, I want us to unpack and understand how to prepare as a small business. Okay, so let's just set the stage for now. We are operating in a world where prices can shift overnight, where shipping gets blocked, and then a war in Europe can drive up fuel costs and fertilizer costs, as we've seen it for somebody in Joburg, someone in Lilongwe, someone in Zambia. The world right now is more connected. However, it's more unpredictable than ever before. And while large corporates, as we know them, have teams that deal with such issues, global events, global trade tensions. For small businesses, it's almost like you have to figure this out on your own. But that's why we're here as Brandmore. And this webinar is all about demystifying those trade tensions and showing how they show up in your day-to-day. And most importantly, equipping you with practical ways to respond to these trade and global issues. So before we go any further, I just want to hear from you. Which global shift is keeping you on the edge? There's a poll that has come on your screen. Is it China? Is it US? Is it the China-US drama? Is it the Russia war? Everyone is saying it's the Russia-Ukraine war. Okay. We've got China-US trade tensions. Yeah, that's taking over. Yeah, so far, about 46% are saying it's the U.S. China trade wars that are keeping them up at night. And then we have 31% saying Ukraine Russia conflict, and 23% saying it's other. Okay, we can end that poll. Okay, moving along. I want us to just unpack these global trade tensions that we've just highlighted as keeping us up at night. So what's really going on in the world? In the recent years, the global trade landscape has become quite turbulent, and we've seen shifts like the U.S. China trade war. The two biggest economies have been slapping tariffs on each other. First, we saw the US impose tariffs up to about 25% on Chinese imports, and that raised US tariffs to about 19%. And then China retaliated with its own tariffs. And so when two elephants fight, as they say it, what suffers? It's the grass. And so when the two big economies are fighting, we all feel the tension. And you know, it gets down to a point where even our currencies are shaken. And often we see how the rand and any other currency in any other part of the world gets affected by what's happening when you know, especially when we refer to the U.S. China trade war, we see how the currencies were impacted. Another global trade tension that has impacted most of us is the BRICS. It's so interesting. I was just thinking about it, that they had to even term Britain's exit from the BRICS. They coined that exit, Brexit, you know, and so we see that in the last, actually in 2020, when the Brexit finally happened, there was a lot of uncertainty in South Africa because South Africa is one of UK's largest Africa trading partner. And so, you know, there was that uncertainty, and South Africa had to scramble, and they had to quickly negotiate new trade agreements with the UK to replace the old EU agreement. And with the uncertainty, people were thinking, so what's going to happen if the UK economy wobbles? You know, what's going to happen to the products that we export to the UK? And luckily, South Africa secured continuity in trade with Britain. But then, because it was a new trade agreement, it still meant there was new paperwork, new rules, and also some jitters from businesses connected to the UK. And then lately we see the BRICS partners, you know, coming together and saying we need to trade in our own currencies. And there's a suggestion, or there's discussion going on even a potential BRICS common currency. This is meant to reduce reliance on the US dollar, right? But then America has come and said, hold on, we're not going to take this lying down. And they've even issued an official warning that countries trying to replace the dollar could wave goodbye to American businesses. And then we've also seen how South Africa sometimes has to walk the tightrope, you know, maintaining good relations with our Western partners and our Eastern friends. For example, we had as a country to stay neutral on certain global issues, like not condemning certain conflicts, and which, even though we chose not to condemn, it still caused friction with the US and put trade benefits at risk. Another economic shockwave came from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And of course, the tragic war since 2022, wow, it's been that long. It seems like yesterday, but yeah, it's almost 3 years now. the global economic shockwaves continue to happen, right? Because Russia is a major exporter of oil, gas, wheat, and fertilizer. And then we know that Ukraine is also a huge exporter of grain. So these war sanctions disrupted supply chains. They disrupted energy, food prices, and fertilizer especially, and more so for South Africa because 41% of fertilizer imports were sourced from Russia. So local farmers suddenly had to pay more for imports, and many countries banned banned exports of certain foods so they protect their own supply, which further shifted the global trade. I remember at one, I think a year ago or so, I was trying to buy sunglasses at a street light by the traffic lights. And the last I checked with that street vendor, those sunglasses were like 50 Rand. And then when I asked that time, he said to me, they are now 70 Rand. And I said, oh, but why? Then he goes, my sister, you know, the Russia-Ukraine war has pushed my cost to order. So you can see how we are all impacted. And then interestingly, my hairdresser too hiked her prices. She said now her transport to work has doubled. And that's all because of the Russia-Ukraine war. And so we see how small businesses, are impacted and how these trade tensions find their way to even the smallest of the grassroots businesses. But on the bigger side of it, the bigger corporate side of it, to curb the resulting inflation, we saw Western central banks hike interest rates, which in turn weakened, currencies like the rand, which lost about 21 to 25% of value from January 2022 to August 2023. Overall, the war injected a lot of uncertainty and pushed up costs for businesses and consumers alike. Okay, so when you look at it, it's actually like a whirlwind tour of global scene of tensions. It's the trade wars, it's Brexit, it's the shifting blocks which cause major conflict in the region. But then you ask yourself, why should we care? Because if these events happen thousands of kilometers away, and even though they happen those many kilometers away, we're all part of a global economy. South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, everyone, we're part of this global economy. We export, we import, we rely on stable rules and prices. And so when the global system is shaky, we all get impacted. And, from the prices to the currencies. I want us to just look at the impact on South African businesses. Like any world phenomenon, it's got two faces, right? The good and the ugly. Some sectors are hit hard while others smile all the way to the bank. As we can see, the citrus farmers worried over losing the U.S. access if anything changes with the AGOA. On the other side, core exporters gained about 720% in terms of exports due to the Ukraine war. So you can see that these global tensions affect us differently. And then when we talk about downstream, the retail, the wholesalers, consumer-facing companies, even if you're not directly trading abroad, the global tensions still find a way to your doorstep through the prices and availability. I was talking to a tech reseller who brings laptops from China. They say that they are facing higher device prices due to chip shortages, but then also due to the rand fluctuations. So you can see that these tensions often, force growing companies to either raise consumer prices because they're trying to massage the margins, or cut the margins, but neither is pleasant, right? When you raise your prices, you risk losing customers. And then when you cut your margins, you struggle to stay afloat. So it's really a rock and a hard place that we find many small businesses, especially retailers, being stuck into. Another example that I have is of a local bicycle shop in my area that reported long delays in getting high-end bike parts that come from the US because tariffs on some Chinese materials had created a backlog. And yet another example that I can think of is a small auto part retailer in Johannesburg that we called the other day when our car broke down. He says he doesn't have most of the parts because he's been importing parts from the Europe. And then he also says, over and above the delays, he has seen about 30% increase in terms of the cost of these spare parts. Overall, these are some of the impacts that I've felt on growing businesses, which I have touched on here and there: the rising inputs, the import costs, delays in imported goods, global supply chain disruptions, export market uncertainty due to trade agreements and sanctions, weaker rand affecting purchasing power and local pricing, consumers cutting back due to high living costs, where people used to have sorted butter. Now they just go for the no name, not as in Pick and Pay, but yeah, the other lower brands of the sorted butter, or not even sorted butter for that matter. And then unstable demand affecting planning and production. These are overall the impact. These are the impacts that have been felt on businesses. Let's make this even more relevant. Which sector are you in? And how have you been impacted? Let's get the poll on the screen. Which sector are you in? And how have you been impacted? We've got professional business services at 100%. Are we all consultants in here? Oh, okay, we've got agriculture, 11%. Interesting. We don't have anyone in retail and manufacturing. Okay, so we will cover how these trade events impact most of these the sectors, high growth sectors, as a way of just getting to understand how different sectors are being impacted. I say that most of us in this webinar are in professional and business services, and we'll also cover high level how we are affected. Okay, thank you very much. We can end that poll and move on. Okay, let's look at how the retail, okay, the next few minutes, actually, I want us to look at how each of those industries or sectors have been impacted by these global trade tensions. So when you look at the retail, it's under pressure due to stock delays, rising input costs, including hair care, electronics, even basic goods, are taking longer and increasing the cost to the shop owner or the retailer. I got a call from an old client who said that they used to bring in packaging at 5 Rand per unit. Now that same packaging in a space of 6 months is 9 Rand. And she says to me, we haven't adjusted our prices. We haven't even included shipping. So this local distributor of skincare products has had to almost be forced to increase prices twice in 6 months due to increased costs on imported bottles and caps. And you've guessed it right. What has been the result? 20% drop in repeat orders. Not because customers didn't like her product, but because their budgets couldn't stretch. So businesses in such situations need to ensure that you monitor your cost changes monthly, and then you explore pricing models that absorb shocks gradually or transparently. Let's move on to manufacturing. Manufacturing is also hit hard. If you rely on steel, machinery, imported components, you know you're dealing with volatility. A growing beverage producer invested in new production equipment to meet rising demand. But then because the shipment was delayed, the return on investment is now behind schedule. And these delays in the manufacturing industry, as I was reading, are forcing the small manufacturing companies to either rent equipment or extend the life of aging machinery, which, both add costs in different ways. And then also, I was speaking to a shop owner in my area. They run a printing company, one of these franchise printing companies. They said that they have seen an increase in input costs by 18% in 1 month due to the weakening rand. And they couldn't update pricing fast enough. And because of that, they have lost out on 3 bulk orders. And so while some may have to look at their pricing monthly, for others, the weekly pricing reviews are imperative because you need to understand how your cost structure is changing in real time. Okay, let's move on to agriculture and agri-processing. They too are facing shocks, fertilizer shocks, water uncertainty, and export risk, especially if trade deals like the AGOA change. I was reading again about a small cashew nut producer in Mpumalanga who's had to scale back their seasonal plans after urea and ammonia nitrate, prices spiked due to the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, this impact is not just about volumes. It's also up for this cashew nut small-scale farmer. It's also about the ability to rotate crops effectively. And so I'm told that many small-scale farmers are now looking for local compost, alternatives, or they are pulling orders together through cooperatives to bring down the costs. Okay, it would have been interesting if we had somebody from the farming sector to just share a little bit, but let's move on. Let's look at construction and related services. They too are feeling the pain from raising material and delays, okay? Projects are stalling or even becoming unviable. A small contractor working on a residential development saw the increase of cement and steel prices spark mid-project. But remember, this was a tender that they bid for. So which means the fixed tender price didn't account for the increase, which cut deep into their profit. I'm sure this does sound familiar to some people. Another subcontractor handling tiling and finishing on residential units faced delays in payment from local developers who were also dealing with their own funding issues. So you do work for your clients, they don't pay you because they've done work for their clients who haven't paid them. So it's really a cycle of disappointment, all stemming from this global tension, and that's why we must care. Okay, let's move to professional services, and that's where most of us are. We are also feeling the squeeze indirectly. When clients suffer, they cut budgets. And just last week, a colleague of ours called us that their biggest client had paused the monthly retainer, not because they hadn't delivered, but because they were cutting costs. And for our consulting services, we hit really hard in there because sometimes growing companies feel consulting services are a luxury. And so consulting is the first one to go. But then even with that, a colleague of mine running a training and facilitation firm showed me 3 unpaid invoices amounting to 350,000 Rand from other businesses, like I said, that were also themselves waiting for government contracts to be paid or supplier settlement. So we are all being impacted, albeit from different angles. And then interestingly, I wanted to also see how creative and digital services are also impacted. And I found out there that they're also being impacted, facing tech hardware shortages and reduced overseas contracts. The bottom line, global risk shows up differently in every sector, but no one is immune. Suffice to say, even at a personal level, there are a lot of people that have been impacted by some executive orders that are being passed, in the US, especially people that work for USAID. So we are all being impacted from different angles. And so as businesses, we should really care about how global issues unfold. Okay, let me do a quick check-in again. Which of these issues are most painful for you right now? Let's get the poll on the screen. We've got delays in imported goods. So it can be from both a personal and business perspective. Where are you being hit most? Okay, we've got 100% saying weak rand affecting my costs. Price spikes in inputs and fuel at 60%. Okay. Yeah, we've got a tie there. Price increases, the spiking inputs, and the weakening rand. And then we've got somebody who says delays in imported goods. So most of us, as it were, are being impacted by the weak rand at 50%. Okay, thank you so much. We can end that poll and continue. So what can you actually do? We have 5 strategies that you can employ in your business to curb some of these global tensions or minimize the impact of the economic shocks. The first one is you need to reassess your core offerings. This is a moment to look beyond revenue reports and just really ask yourself, which customers are barely holding on? Which products now take longer to deliver or costs more to produce than they are worth? It's really not about profitability. It's about pressure. It's about how you're responding. Maybe there's that customer that you've always had a sweet spot for, but now they're defaulting on payment. Do you continue with them? Or maybe there's that product that once flew off the shelf, but it's now sitting quietly draining your margins. Do you continue with that product? Or maybe there are other areas in your businesses that used to do well, but not anymore. You have to see the truth for what it is. And that's the first step to refocusing on what is really going on. One of the things that we are encouraging our clients to do is to focus or look at what we call local hero products. Think of it as something that will help you curb out some of the costs, like costs of importing. So if you can find something local, you might as well go there. You don't necessarily have to always look for imported goods. We've got beautiful and high quality local products. So the first strategy, as we say, as I've shared now, is that you need to reassess your core offering in whatever sector you're in. based on how you're impacted by these global tensions. And then strategy number 2, diversify, diversify, diversify. Okay, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, by the way, is not just a buzzword anymore. It's an invitation to expand beyond borders without the red tape. So instead of baiting all your products on dollar-driven markets, why not explore opportunities in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, in Botswana, where the demand, where you could find demand. You may already have the product. So what you need to do right now is just find the right cross-border partners, the platforms and trade routes. And this is really not about exporting big, but it's about exporting smart. And by the way, the trade fairs aren't just about flashy books anymore. They're about visibility, connection, and learning where the market is growing. So you might walk into a trade fair looking for leads, but then you walk out with partnerships. You walk up with funding contracts, or even regional insights that you couldn't find on Google. The message is that in time of disruption, opportunity shows up, and you need to show up where opportunity gathers. Strategy number 3, you need to strengthen your supply chain. The core here is not to wait for disruption to force your hand. Diversify your option now while you still can. Can you work with 2 suppliers instead of 1 supplier? Or can you co-import with others in your industry to reduce costs? And this is where collaboration beats competition, right? In a disrupted world, resilience, I am told, often comes from creating strong relationships. Moving on to strategy number 4, use support and agreements. South Africa is part of trade agreements that give you easier access to more than 50 African countries, if I'm not mistaken, with reduced tariffs or simplified entry. So if you're exporting under general terms, if you're still exporting under general terms, you could be overpaying or missing out. For example, the SADC agreement gives regional preference to businesses within Southern region. And then the AfTA, as they say it, is expanding to enable duty-free trade across the African continent. So this, by the way, isn't just for large exporters. Even if you're only shipping to or you're only shipping to 2 or 1 market, the benefits can be substantial. And the key is to know what's available and align your strategy accordingly. The last strategy, collaborate to build resilience. In uncertain times, I said it, collaboration often beats competition, especially for growing businesses. And I've got a few examples on how we can achieve this practically, where we create partnerships, not rivalry, and how we can together drive resilience, save on costs across the different sectors. Independent builders, for example, could group together and buy cement, steel, or fittings to negotiate better deals from discounted hardware suppliers. Then there's also an element of potential ingredient pooling. For example, local bakeries could buy flour, sugar, yeast as a collective so that they improve the supplier terms and stabilize their pricing. There's also an issue where we can work together, refer clients within our network. For example, a legal advisor could refer clients to a tax consultant and vice versa, creating what we call trusted ecosystems of leads. And then there's skill bundling. Now, this is where, as an example, a graphic designer, a copywriter, and a web developer come together and create a joint campaign for, let's say, brand refresh, and package it together, because they would get more as opposed to if they were solo. Now, when you look at these scenarios, you see that they're workable solutions, but only if, as growing businesses, we could partner and collaborate to do what? To build resilience. Okay. Here is now where you get value for the time that you spend with us during these webinars. We have developed, or we use, a resilience assessment and decision metrics, which we're going to share with you after the webinar. This tool gives you a structured and practical way to sit back and ask, what is working? What is under pressure? Where do we need to adapt now? It's designed to help business leaders and your teams reflect quickly, align actions, and make smart, intentional decisions, even when the environment is unpredictable. It has 10 simple questions, as you can read through. I'm not going to read through them. We'll share this too with you. But for each of these questions, you give a score of 1 to 5. And then there are 3 decisions that you make for each of the 10 questions. You make individual decisions to either double down, that is, if it's working well, and if your score for that question is between 4 and 5. So you strengthen that, you replicate, and you scale. If your score is between 2 and 3 on any of the questions, then it means you're doing well in terms of assessing your business on how you're impacted by the global trends and global events or issues. However, you need to do more. So you need to improve on execution. Perhaps you need to assign resources, or you just need to review where the gaps are. And then the third decision that you need to make is when you have a score of 1 for any of those questions. Here, you need to pause, replace, redesign the process, or decide if it's not relevant. I'm going to share with you just an expert of how the tool looks like in Excel and how you'd apply it. So we've given 3 examples. And remember, you're answering the questions, did we do well in assessing ourselves against these global tensions, against the fluctuating currency, against the war in Ukraine, whatever it is that's happening at the moment. So, for example, the first question is, did we review how global trade events are impacting our costs and operations? If you scored a 2, then the decision that you need to make as an executive and your team is to adjust. And adjusting could mean maybe you need to update your monthly cost tracker so that you can have better visibility into your costs. Another example is on, did we secure or test local alternatives for key imports? Remember, I said that we don't always have to go for imports. We can look at alternatives locally. So if you're in that sort of a business that allows you to have that option, and when you do the assessment, you score a 1, you need to pause and assign someone in your team to look at how you can source locally. Okay, and then the third example that we have is, did we make a clear change this month in response to trade pressures? For this one, if you scored a 5, then you're good. You need to double down on that. Document what you did and replicate that process. So all in all, what we're saying is no sector of business is immune to these global tensions. No individual at a personal level is immune. From a business perspective, as business owners, we need to be proactive into how we respond to these global issues. And to do that, we need to embed that resilience assessment in our either monthly decisions, weekly decisions, however volatile your sector is, you just have to embed in that. And we've gone, we've done 90% of the work for you by developing this tool for you so that you can go and use it. And by the way, you can actually amend it to suit your scenario. You don't necessarily have to use our scenarios. You can put in any questions that are relevant to your scenario. The point is you need to be on the ball, understand what is impacting your cost if you have to stay afloat as a small business. And with that, we have come to the end of our webinar today. Let me just go through the key takeaways. Number one, you need to stay informed about global events. Number two, you need to diversify your risk, your market, your suppliers, your products, your customers. You cannot hold on to what worked yesterday because it's not going to guarantee success for today, later on for tomorrow. And then ask yourself as a business leader, ask yourself as a team leader, what one area in our business can I strengthen today based on what's going on around us? And then the last one, you need to understand how you're going to build business agility and connections for your business. I will end there. If there are any contributions, if there's anyone in the meeting or in the webinar that has something to share, they've been impacted in a certain way, and they'll just love to share with the rest of us, you can just, by show of your virtual hand, the team will unmute you and we'll hear your views. Or if there are any questions, we'll take those questions now. Anyone who would like to share with us what the experience has been? I saw that we've got a number of people in the professional services. It would be interesting to hear from someone how they've been impacted. I saw one of our clients. She's an attorney. It would be interesting to hear how attorneys have been impacted by these global tensions. I don't want to mention her, but if she would like to share, we will unmute you. Anyone? I'm not able to see the hands here, or better still, if you feel like you can't speak, you can type in the chat, and then the team will address that. We'll give it another minute, and then if there are no questions, and if we don't have anyone who wants to share how they've been impacted, I'll hand over to the technical team to ush us out from the webinar. So let's give it a minute and see if we have any. Yes, there's a question in the chat.
No, somebody's asking if they can.
Okay, we have somebody asking for the PDF. We will share that with you once the meeting is finished, so please look forward to that. Let me just see if there's another question here. Okay, no, that's all we have in the chat for now.
Okay, I think let me hand over to you, Hazel. That will be all from me. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Carol. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I'm hopeful that what we had to share today is going to assist you in one way or the other. As mentioned before, we will share the presentation slides with you after this meeting. And we also have an upcoming webinar that we will be emailing you about with that presentation, the presentation slides. So please just look forward to that. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. See you in the next one.